From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down the latest with the Denver Broncos as they have moved on from their head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. They've also moved on special teams coordinator Dwayne Stukes and offensive line coach Butch Barry. Some big changes here for the Denver Broncos. Ben, we've been talking about for a while on Broncos Country Tonight that we thought they might wait until the end of the season. Why do you think they decided to make the move now?
Well, that was the original plan. The original plan was to wait until the end of the year, and we knew that was going to happen then, but some things exacerbated that. You know, a team that the card that Nathaniel Hackett still had in his pocket was the team was playing hard for him. That they hadn't given up on him. And then the LA game happened, and it was very clear that there was minimal effort out there from many players, and it kind of imploded. It cratered really on the sideline when Brett Rippon and Dalton Reisner kind of got into it with each other. Brett was telling the offensive line they needed to go pick Russ up after back-to-back sacks, in which they didn't. And the offensive line apparently got angry about that. Words were exchanged. I think everybody's seen the video at this point. Nathaniel Hackett was right there, walked over in the middle of it and just kind of tapped Dalton Reisner on the arm and then went right back to it. There's no discipline, no control, nothing. And then, of course, you had the Randy Gregory situation afterwards. And, it just felt like that at that point that he had lost the one thing that you could hang your hat on to the end of the season, which was that he had control, the players were still fighting for him. So I think in the end, ownership said, all right, this is just as good a point as any to pull the plug. We were trying to wait till the end of the year, but unfortunately, we've now seen an embarrassment, and we can't do embarrassment. We can do one-score losses and let you coach out the string for ego's sake, but we're not going to encourage embarrassment.
Yeah, and at that point, I mean, we're talking about all the primetime games this year, the culmination of looking bad on national stages every single time. I certainly felt after that game, giving up 50 points, and of course, part of that was a pick six, but giving up 50 points in prime time to a team that was only scoring a little over 16 points per game in the LA Rams with a quarterback that just got there a couple of weeks ago. It really did feel like the culmination of everything. I mean, 5 red zone touchdowns given up by that defense. So you just have not seen a performance like that all year long. It felt like, when you're talking about the scales, it just felt like a boulder just slammed in on one side.
Yeah, and it was quite embarrassing because you were talking about the Rams' fourth quarterback this year, no Aaron Donald, they're missing most of the receivers, all that kind of stuff, and then you come out and you suffer the worst loss of the franchise you've had, I believe, since Josh McDaniels' year that he was fired.
Jamarcus Russell.
It wasn't that, the McFadden game, I believe. I think it was that game. Anyway,
no, it was.
Okay, all right. I mean, I wasn't 100% on that. So, yeah, I think it was that game. But anyway, he was the Raiders' largest loss.
That was at home, but yeah.
Largest loss since Josh McDaniels. And that certainly says something, I think. And so I just think that they couldn't, at this point, it was like, well, what's the point now? We can actually start the interview process early. So, but they reiterated the plan was to wait till the end of the year.
Yeah, we did hear that from Greg Penner as well as the general manager, George Payton, that the plan was for the end of the year. The Broncos, obviously, as an organization, felt like now was the time. And as you mentioned, I think perfectly, just want to reiterate that the NFL does allow the final 2 weeks to you to get a bit of a jump on the head coaching search. So, again, the Broncos had a plan. Things change. We also talked about the other side of that all week is like, hey, what if they win out? If they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, if they beat the LA Chargers, what will that look like? And if those conversations would impact anything as far as Nathaniel Hackett's job. But I think if you were looking for a definitive reason, and that's what this felt like, it was a definitive, this is clearly the direction this is heading. It was the performance against the Rams. So that's where you go. Now on to where we're at. Jerry Rosburg is going to be the interim head coach. It looks like as though they're probably retain the rest of the staff, at least right now, until the end of the year, though.
Yeah, you're already short bodies. You can't afford to sit there and fire more people and just put more work on everybody. There's going to be some guys that you're going to be shorthanded, guys that are doubling up on some things, and you'll probably see a few penalties here or there that probably wouldn't otherwise occur simply because you've got guys in spots that are doubling up their workload, and things are going to fall through the cracks naturally. That just happens. So for the last 2 games of the season, you are going to see a little bit of that. Jerry Rosburg, he's a detail-oriented, meticulous kind of guy. I don't think that he's in the running to be the next head coach of the Denver Broncos, but who knows? These next 2 weeks are a chance for him to kind of show that. I think if you're the Broncos overall here, I think that what you need to be doing at this point is just kind of evaluating what you've got left, what these pieces are, and what you're doing going forward. I don't think much of this staff is going to be retained. I think there are people that could be retained. Everett will obviously get a head coach interview, and there are some people, Christian Parker, that will get some that will get some love on that kind of stuff. The rest of them, though, there's not many people here that are going to be retained.
It's a tough deal. I mean, you go into the season and listening to Greg Penner and George Paton talk about it in the press conference. You go into this season with these high expectations. The reason you made the Russell Wilson move was you wanted this team to suddenly go from missing the playoffs for 6 straight years to slingshotting back into contention. And I think that was the general conversation in the offseason. So I guess when Greg Penner and George Paton, along with the rest of the committee, go to interview the next head coaching candidates, how are they looking at their own process and what they inevitably arrived at to hire Nathaniel Hackett and what went wrong?
Well, I love that Greg Penner actually pointed that out. He's very specifically said, point blank, I respected George's process. We just didn't arrive at the right result. And it's something we've been talking about on the radio show is process versus result. Sometimes you can have the process right and still get the wrong result. And I do believe that they had the right intent with the things that they went into. They just wound up with a guy who sold himself and couldn't deliver. And I think everybody, it was kind of interesting because talking to people, behind the scenes at that presser is everybody loves Nathaniel Hackett. Everybody loves him as a person. We all liked him as a person, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to coach too, and that's a large part of it. So I know they said they won't exclusively look at experience, and they'll cast a wide net on that. But I do think that there will be a weight to that, and if a candidate doesn't have that, they're going to have to double and triple check to make sure that person is going to be and deliver what they say they can.
Yeah, and that's the thing we oftentimes see, right? I mean, you got 3 straight years of going with first-time head coaches, and then it clearly hasn't worked. They did say that they will continue to look at first-time head coaches and first-opportunity coaches, but most of the time in the NFL, we're used to this, Ben. We see the slingshot, right? The boomerang effect of, we're going to go in a lot of ways opposite. I mean, even Nathaniel Hackett was opposite of Vic Fangio in so many different ways in the kind of culture that he was bringing into the building. Right. So it feels to me like you're almost kind of have to go experience here unless some kind of first-year head coach really does have the perfect plan, the thing you were looking for all along.
Yeah, I think the pendulum, it swings back and forth. You started with, with Vance Joseph, a first-time young head coach, and then you wanted experience, although it wasn't experience as a head coach, so you went and got Vic Fangio. Well, then you were like, okay, we need more of a player's guy that's more collaborative, so we got Nathaniel Hackett. I think you need to not let the weaknesses of the previous person dictate the hire. I think you need to find the balance of the skill set that you need and not just, hey, there's this one glaring thing that was missing. We're all in on that. And I think that's part of the problem here, with Nathaniel Hackett. I think the big thing that Vic was missing was a collaborative work environment and kind of being a player's coach. And so they went heavily to that side with Nathaniel Hackett. I understand wanting to correct the problem, but you've also got to take care of the baseline too.
Well, there was kind of an interesting moment in the press conference, and it's not one that I'm like an aha moment or anything. It's more of an observational kind of thing. As George Paton was talking about the sales pitch to this upcoming coaching staff, there was a very specific name he omitted in that, and that was the quarterback, Russell Wilson. Now, that's not to say that was an intentional omission. It just felt as though if you're really selling this team, when having a quarterback in place, what you deem as a franchise quarterback, a guy that's under contract for several years, most of the time that would be viewed like that. So how should we take the Broncos and where they're sitting right now with Russell Wilson and how that impacts who they're going to be looking at a head coach?
I don't think it does. I think later on in the presser when he talked about we believe that we can fix Russell Wilson, we believe that he is fixable. I think they'll listen to everything. They don't want to limit a coach to you have to do this. They want to hear the other sides of that, but I think that's what that was. I think that's saying, hey, in the interview process, we're not going to limit you to you have to take him. We want to hear what you have to say, but this is our preference. This is the direction we're looking at. So I think that was the best way to say that, or the easiest way to say that without coming out and saying it.
Well, right, and so I think that's appropriate, right? Because you do need to have some contingencies with this. I think you do have a plan on what is the short-term outlook of making things work with Russell Wilson, because you have such a heavy investment in him, not only in the draft capital you gave up, but also, of course, now in his contract. But simultaneously, you do need to think about other options in case he really is at the end. And I don't think he's at the end as in what we saw this year, but I think that a decline is a realistic conversation. So that as an organization, you have to have that situation like, okay, well, is he capable better? Sure. Yeah, I think he's capable better. How good is that? And what does that actually give us as a team? And what can we put in place in case that isn't good enough and we need to make another change?
And I think that's the approach you have to have. I think you have to walk into it as everything is malleable. This is our preference, But if it doesn't work, then we need to be able to move off that. And I think that's the approach. We talked about it on the radio show yesterday, the emergency show after the firing was announced, and that was balancing the short-term goals of maximizing Russell Wilson with the long-term goals of what is best for the franchise in case those two things aren't the same thing.
That's exactly right. So certainly a challenge. They've got some challenges in front of them. If you were going to go off just some names that you think that would be a possibility that the Broncos will be looking at, you mentioned Evero. They already mentioned that in the press conference. They're going to go ahead and give him an interview because they really do believe in him. Mm-hmm. Hopefully there's a scenario where maybe he even can stick around. He is under contract after all. But what other guys, other coaches out there are you hearing?
Well, I think you're, obviously Dan Quinn, Brian Schottenheimer makes a lot of sense given what's on this roster. That'll probably be given an interview. We talked about Jim Harbaugh, somebody they'll make an inquiry, and I'm not sure Jim Harbaugh is going to be interested in this job, but they'll at least make the inquiry, and that's responsible. They'll reach out to Sean Payton. We know he's not interested in this job. Can they convince him to suddenly be interested? I doubt it. We'll see. And then there will be other people that will be examined as well. Shane Steichen, who is around the league, going to be the hottest name in terms of being a first-time head coach this cycle. He'll have options. I'm not sure he'd come here. I don't know that they'll revisit John Gannon, who was a favorite last year, but they may.
Also from the Eagles.
Yeah. So there are guys out there I think that they're definitely going to take a look at, and that search net will widen a little bit as they go. I wouldn't be surprised to see DeMeco Ryans get an interview, even though I don't think he's actually a candidate for the job. There, like I said, there'll be names out there that they'll certainly take a look at.
All right. Looking forward to it. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Denver's going to win! You can stand up and salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.